Well, welcome everyone to the ATX DAO Podcast. We are excited today to welcome our guest. We have Alex. He is the head of ecosystem for DogeOS. Alex, welcome, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, really glad to have you on. So you're a local Austinite, so really excited to have a local here on the show. Unfortunately, we couldn't get together in person, but really excited to chat with you remotely. Wanted to get started by just kind of talking a little bit about kind of your role within DogeOS and more importantly, what DogeOS is. So I think a lot of folks are familiar with Dogecoin and want to kind of talk more about kind of the role that y'all have in the ecosystem with DogeOS. So would love you to kind of just take us through a little bit.
So DogeOS is the application layer for Dogecoin. Dogecoin is a massive asset. It's a massive community as well. In some ways, I think that it's potentially the most normie-friendly asset out there. I know obviously people would say Bitcoin is the most normie-friendly asset, but there's that weird thing about perceived value, and people are like, I can't afford a Bitcoin. It's $120,000. But Doge is something that they've known of for a long time. All of our parents here know what Doge is. Right. And it's 20 cents or whatever it is. So it feels much more approachable. But so what we're doing with DogeOS is we're basically bringing, EVM composability on top of Doge, because Doge, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a fork of Litecoin. And so, there's no smart contracts or anything there. So we're bringing ZK EVM and bringing, a whole ecosystem on top of it. And basically the way I see it is we're activating an asset that is just not active, right? There's not much you can do with it. There's no yield. And yeah, that's what we're going for.
Very cool. So, to prime the audience here, we have Doge, top 10 crypto asset, approximately $30 billion, I believe, in market cap. So you're essentially tapping into this massive liquidity pool and trying to build applications and utility into this meme coin that is Doge, right? So as far as the activity and applications that you're trying to build within DogeOS, looking through some of your website, you have a lot of stuff on gaming, you have a lot of stuff, within a variety of different sectors. Like, what are you currently building on within DogeOS that, excites you currently?
Yeah, so I lead ecosystem, and so this is very near and dear to my heart. I've been able to bring over like a lot of the best builders I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the past 5 years or so that I'm in the space. So we've got some really cool stuff being built. We'll have all of the core DeFi. We're going to bring over some of the blue chip DeFi apps. I'm personally much more excited about new things being built. Just off the top of my head, we have one which is a new way to launch tokens. So it is essentially unruggable, unsnipeable. The value model is completely different than how you assume that tokens work and everything that you know about tokens. So it's like just a completely different paradigm. It's more meant for IP owners, brands, creators, celebrities who are worried about their token getting hawk to. But I think that, personally, I think that's the future, and like pump fund style launchpads are going to go away. So I'm super, super excited about that one. They've got some insane partnerships lined up, and it's just a really, really good team. We have a stablecoin being built called USDoge, which I personally think is an Athena killer, which I know is, that's a strong statement, but USDoge it's an Athena-like model, but it uses what's called a dynamic risk model rather than a static risk model for how you value the collateral on the CDP side of it. So a static risk model is like what you see with Aave or every use of leverage inside of the entire ecosystem. It's you get 70% for your ETH or 80% for your ETH or whatever. The traditional finance world stopped doing that 30 years ago, 35 years ago or something, and they developed much more safe methods of doing this. That's why you don't see the same sort of liquidations you see in the traditional world as what you see in the crypto world, like what happened last weekend. Last weekend was a mess for anybody who's watching this weeks from now. And so it uses a model that really just minimizes the amount of liquidations that happen because it's just a much more advanced model. And additionally, it's bringing on some novel yield sources for the staking side of it. There's going to be a lot of tokenized private credit. So for anybody who doesn't know what that means, it's like commercial loans essentially. So one of the ones that I think is going to get added is this aviation loan. That's like, I think it's a combination of like Delta and Rolls-Royce engines and like the biggest aircraft fueling company and whatever. When they take out loans, they take it out as a group. And I think they pay like an 8% interest rate or something. So that's how the entire traditional finance world works. We should have that stuff on chain. So cool RWA stuff like that. One other one I'll touch on, there's a project called Gamble, which is super cool. And I don't want to get too into it because I don't want somebody to like front run this idea, but it's essentially you combine Twitch streaming, PvP gambling. So you're not playing against a house, it's players playing against each other. And then like almost like a copy trading experience where if you're watching somebody who's streaming, you can contribute to their pot and bet alongside them. And so I think that's a pretty cool, like innovative thing that's like very timely. Everybody loves streaming. People love copy trading. So yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff being built. Those are just two that stand out off the top of my head.
That's awesome. No, those sound really cool. And so, and it's cool to get to see stuff actually getting built there. Cause I think like to your point earlier, I think a lot of up to date Doge has been the main capability is to trade Doge, but having more utility to it, having more ability to do things like that. So what is it like? So as like you're heavily involved in bringing these folks over to Doge, like what's like in addition to like the liquidity, which Tom mentioned, top 10 token, but what are the kind of the big drivers? Why are they so excited to be working with you? Like what are some of the things that you see there that just gets them pumped to do that?
You mean the Doge community? Do you mean Ethereum builders? What are you referring to?
So people that are building on DogeOS.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So I was a builder for, the past several years and building DeFi apps. And it's interesting to be on the other side of the equation here, where it's like I'm coming from the ecosystem perspective. And I think that we've had a lot of success by just really focusing on what builders need, right? And as opposed to some other ecosystems, which just give massive grants and, that's their way of attracting people. I know a lot of builders who just farm grants like that, right? And they're not even that worried about making money. They're like, I'm going to take this $500,000 grant and that's going to get us through the year. And then we're going to find another grant in a few months, right? And that doesn't appeal to me at a core level. But additionally, it's like, what do teams actually need? For one, they need distribution. And we have a massive amount of distribution. I realize our chain is not live yet, but we have, just a massive amount of distribution on Twitter already from the stuff that we've built in the past, as well as, we have a wallet, which is what this company evolved from. We can talk about in a bit, but the wallet has, over 500, almost approaching 600,000 active users in it. And so we're able to direct that user base towards apps. At the end of the day, that's, there's so many people building in Web3. It's, it's an attention economy. If we're able to drive attention towards apps, I think that's super appealing. The other thing is that Doge holders, for the most part, don't interact with the Web3 community, Web3 economy, right? They're crypto native, they're crypto holders, but they're either holding their assets on Dogecoin L1 or they're holding them in sexes or wherever. I view that group as sort of like the easiest to bring into the Web3 world, right? They're already comfortable with it. They just need to be shown these things, and we need to like break some of the bad UI UX that we're all used to, right? And so I think that's very appealing to these guys as well. It's like, if we can bring over even 100,000 of those people, I don't know how many users you guys think are in Web3 right now. I would bet that is less than 500,000, right? And so to bring over a new 100,000, that's massive. Tom, I can see you're disagreeing with me potentially, but it's not that many. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's so tough to balance wallet addresses versus actual people. So yeah, I know that's been a hotly debated topic for a while, but certainly 100,000 is certainly substantial. But you had touched upon your, customers that you're looking to bring on, right? So would you be able to elaborate a bit more as far as your ideal customer profile? Is it like these people that have Doge sitting in their wallets that, have been actively engaging within the Doge community for years? Is it trying to bridge over like Solana, French natives? Like, how do you think of, your ideal customer profile?
Yeah. So first off, I'd prefer to call them community than customers. I prefer not to think about them as customers. That's not how we think about them. But, I think we both need to appeal to existing Web3 users as well as to these new entrants into Web3. And so, I meet a lot of the Doge community who they know what a DEX is, but they've never used one. Right. And they understand that there are these really good opportunities in DeFi, but they've never actually really taken advantage of them. They're sick of the flow of value across like all of the content that we engage with. And so I think anyone who's like open-minded to something new and is already, somewhat familiar with this is really ideal for us. I could tell you that I originally got into DeFi into Web3 because I was really interested in democratizing the financial world for people, right? There's all these things that none of us on this call have access to. But if you're an ultra high net worth individual, if you're an institution, you can get whatever 15% on your dollar every year for some sort of fund that you're in. I feel like that was a big focus years ago and it's kind of gone away, but like for me that's still a focus, right? I really want to allow people to get more for their money and to have access to the sorts of things that only the elites get access to. So yeah, I mean, I think that's also sort of the ideal community, is the people who are like, oh man, I could get 8% on dollars if I, do these very simple things, break the UI UX that's already broken in crypto and redo it so that it's easy. Like I think, those are the sorts of people that I would like to appeal to.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I've kind of gotten more engaged in the Doge community. Just obviously one of our other co-hosts who wasn't able to join us today, Ash, is there. And so I have listened into a couple of the spaces that his group does and that kind of thing. And it is a little different than a lot of other Web3 communities. I think some of the things that kind of appeal to someone in the Doge community are maybe a little bit different. I think there's a lot more focus on like fun and those kinds of things. But anything that you would kind of share just in your like interactions with folks within the community that you think kind of, especially appeals to them, and kind of how that fits into what y'all focus on?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We've started doing stuff with TJ Miller. Do you guys know TJ Miller, the actor from Silicon Valley? If you go on our socials, you'll see him on there. We've started doing stuff with him. We have all this really cool stuff coming. But what he said, he's been a big Bitcoin guy for a while. Right. He's been like a 10-year Bitcoin guy. And I think he has a lot of his net worth in Bitcoin. And when we first met, just sort of randomly, he thought this was really stupid, right? There was like no convincing of him of this. And then we kind of kept running into each other and spending time together, and he got Doge pilled. And now he's coming up with all these ideas of things to do on DogeOS. And what he keeps saying is like, Web3 and crypto in general is so self-serious at this point. Why can't we actually be having fun doing this, right? Like we should have fun. We should have humor, right? And so I think it goes to what you're saying is like the Doge community is still very much into that, right? They're into like zany, wacky, fun, funny things. And so, I think that the design for a lot of things, that third-party builders are doing on DogeOS, there has been a focus on like, how do we make a product that is both serious but is also fun, right? And I'm always kind of telling them, how do you not alienate the institutional groups? Like you can make it fun, but it can't be like, too wacky. But so I think a lot of what's being built is trying to sort of like go back to that core Doge ideology. Right.
Yeah, very cool. Speaking of TJ Miller, I saw he was, I believe, present at Korea Blockchain Week. You guys had a massive presence out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as like fostering community, would love to get your insight as far as how you think of, these IRL activations, these, digital presence that, massive digital presence that Doge has. Like, how do you not nurture that existing community and, try to ultimately continue to grow Doge presence globally?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So let's talk about events first. So you guys have been in the space for a while, I assume. I remember I was doing stuff in the Solana ecosystem a few years ago, and Solana hacker houses were like the best events, right? And it was because it was just a really nice place to hang out. They had places that you could work. They had places you could network. They always had some sort of cool activation thing. They had parties. Like it was awesome. And what I've seen over the past few years is crypto events just start to seem more and more like a waste of money. And they're not that effective. And I think it's because we like departed too much from that. And so, I'm trying to bring that approach back. I'm sort of come from a position of a lot of bias here because my wife worked for Red Bull for 6 years doing events and still does events for Red Bull externally. Right. And so like I've seen the sort of like the best of what these sorts of activations should be. And so, yeah, we definitely are trying to have a focus on really good in-person events and just like doing cool and fun stuff at KBW. We brought TJ. We also, we partnered with a Korean dog rescue that's between New York and Korea. And we had a bunch of rescue dogs come and hang out at the booth. It was mostly Shiba Inus. And got a lot of attention for that group. Everybody loved the dogs. I think 3 of the dogs got adopted, which is amazing. And these were all dogs that came from like, farms or like high kill shelters and whatnot. So trying to like do good. If you guys don't know, Doge stands for do only good every day, right? So trying to do good and have fun at the same time. We also had a big party with Gaia. We had Chris Lake play. If you guys know Chris Lake, it was like, it was a rager. It was a lot of fun. So we're trying to do more stuff like that. And then in terms of engaging the community more globally, one of the things we're working on is having smaller regional events constantly, like activate the Doge community in Lagos or wherever, right? And like find those core community members, give them a bit of resources to like have a pizza party or rent out a bar for the night or whatever, and like try to just do that stuff globally. I think it's a really good way to grow community. Online is way trickier. And, luckily the Doge community is a very tight knit community and we're really embedded with the Doge community. And I think we have really strong relationships there. But yeah, I mean, I think activating community online has, especially in the past few months, gotten trickier and trickier. Like with everything that Twitter's been doing to kind of nuke how the feed works, it's been interesting.
Yeah, for sure. But that IRL stuff definitely is huge. I think the more you can have connections with people together, I think is awesome. And by the way, I mean, if your wife working for Red Bull, that is a huge asset because I feel like I've never been to a Red Bull event that wasn't amazing.
Exactly.
Back in the day, they used to do like the most amazing South by Southwest parties. And they do lots of stuff. So
she did those parties.
Oh, nice.
You've definitely been to her parties then, yeah. Because we were living in Austin. She was working for Red Bull for a long time.
Nice. Yeah, those were legit. I miss the days when South by used to have as good of parties. I think now they've kind of gotten a little bit calmer, or maybe I'm just not on the cool list anymore.
No, South by's not as cool anymore. It used to be way cooler. I think the decline of South by happened when Fader Fort left. I think that was when they built the Whole Foods and there was no more Fader Fort. That was like the end of South by for me.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll see. Maybe when the new convention center comes out in a couple of years, it'll be cool again. But yeah, we'll figure that out. But awesome. No, that's really good. So speaking of kind of like you've been in the community for a long time. So obviously you mentioned that you've kind of DogeOS kind of came from the wallet. So maybe talk a little bit more about like kind of that, like what led y'all to kind of go from being a wallet provider to creating your own OS, sorry, and just kind of how like that's kind of come about.
Yeah, so Jordan and Alex, the CEO and CTO, I go by Hoff on our team, by the way, because it makes it a little bit less confusing. Jordan and Alex, they built My Doge, which is it's the Doge wallet. It's the biggest Doge wallet, and over the past, I think it's 4 years of doing that, they were able to just create a massive community around that. I think largely by just giving back. They created a tipping bot for X because tipping is huge in the Doge community. And so, they just did a bunch of things that were really supportive of the community and built a lot of trust there. At some point, I think they were themselves getting frustrated with the fact that you couldn't build that much on Doge and how limiting it is. And so they were like, how do we solve this problem? And so then they started exploring what the best options would be. And I think they eventually settled on a ZK EVM app layer on top of DogeOS, because then we can bring all of the goodness of Solidity over there.
Very cool. So yeah, and that's really cool that they did that.
You had mentioned a bit about as far as speculation and where Doge fits within, the broader crypto ecosystem. Curious as far as how you think about DogeOS and its competitors, right? You have like Shiba Inu that's trying to build an app layer. You have the Bonk team that does a ton of stuff on within the Bonk ecosystem. Do you think your main competitors are these existing meme coin communities, or do you think it's more so these existing layer twos, like abstract base, what have you? Curious as far as your thoughts within the competitive landscape that you fit into.
Doge is the meme, right? It's the original meme. I believe it's the meme that will outlive all of us, right? Personally, I believe that 100 years from now, Bitcoin is going to exist and Doge is going to exist, and I don't know what else is going to exist. Maybe Solana does, maybe Ethereum. I have no idea what's going to happen, but like Doge being the original meme, it's shown how much staying power it has, right? But yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on what community you're talking about, right? Because if we're talking about the existing Web3 community, then yeah, I guess, you could say that Abstract is a competitor. If we're talking about games, and we're going to have a big focus on games, and it's a really good team. Friends with the Pudgy guys. We're going to be collaborating with them on stuff. But yeah, I guess they are a competitor if we're talking about games. If we're talking about DeFi and Web3 community, then yeah, I mean, we're kind of competing with every other layer out there. My thesis is that in order to have a thriving DeFi economy on our chain, we need to have like at least best in class with everything that's out there. And then we need to have one or two things that are better, right? So, I already talked about one use of leverage that is truly better than what exists other places. I think we need to have a better trading experience, and then, we compete. With the Doge community, I don't really think that there's any competition, honestly. There's some other people who are trying to do some things to bring yield to Doge, but they're not really activating an entire ecosystem around it. And so if anything, I mean, I know there's a group, I believe they're called LitVM, which is trying to do something similar with Litecoin. Really good guys, strong team. And I think there are people trying to do similar things with XRP. I think if anything, it's more that, right? It's like these other sort of layers that are getting built on top of these assets like XRP and Litecoin.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So one of the things that kind of got me thinking about as you were saying that, and like clearly like the Doge community is very different than the Bitcoin community. But like as you kind of talk to folks about like things being built on Bitcoin, so there's a lot of Bitcoin L2s, those kinds of things. And there's a lot of strong feelings about, hardcore Bitcoiners that's blasphemy. Bitcoin is meant to be Bitcoin, and it's not meant to do anything else but be Bitcoin. Has there been any kind of that sentiment in the Doge community, or are they pretty excited about what y'all are bringing, or what are you kind of hearing in terms of like any of the feelings around like what y'all are doing to build more capabilities within the ecosystem?
Yeah. So first off, let's talk about Bitcoin community, because this is something I end up talking about a lot. I believe, and I believe I'm watching this play out as well, that the Bitcoin community is just fundamentally different than probably any other community in crypto, but definitely than the Doge community. Bitcoiners, for the most part, they want to send their Bitcoin to cold storage and leave it there and never touch it. And I think that's why we've watched most of the Bitcoin L2s kind of fail. They're extremely puritanical about that asset, right? Why would you try to get some yield on it? You don't need to. It's fine. It's Bitcoin. I don't think that Doge holders feel the same way. I think, the Doge community has shown since the beginning that it's really open to innovation and to new things. And I think the way that the Doge community views Doge versus Bitcoin community viewing Bitcoin is that they want to use their Doge. They want to spend their Doge, right? Doge is the future currency of Mars. They want utility for this. And I think we are the current best option for really bringing a lot of utility to an asset that's what they want. They want utility for it.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, especially with like you mentioned earlier, the tipping culture. Like it's like, to your point, it's meant to be spent. It's like it's not something to hodl. It's like let's use this and that kind of thing. So that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. One of the things I'm trying to get them to to see is that, there are people who want to hodl, and I think they should be hodling some, but they also want to spend it. So like the US Doge that I brought up earlier is, that's a CDP that'll accept a number of different assets, but it's based on Doge, right? And so like, why would you spend your Doge if you were long Doge? Why wouldn't you just borrow against it and spend that? Right? Especially if it's very, very inexpensive to borrow against. So I'm trying to get sort of the mindset going in that direction.
Yeah, that there's the funny chart that's kind of been circulating around crypto Twitter, which is price performance of Bitcoin versus Doge since 2014. And I know Bitcoiners are so obsessed saying, all right, this is the best money that's ever been invented. But since Doge has been created, it's actually been a higher performer than Bitcoin, which I think is just objectively hilarious.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because there's some like super high level Bitcoin guys who everybody knows, everybody I know follows them on Twitter, extremely influential, who approached us because they've been wanting to have some of the same upgrades for Bitcoin that we've been wanting to have for Doge. And so they're helping us now just because they want to get this done for Doge so that they can get it done for Bitcoin as well. But when I first met these guys, one of them was basically saying that, the more that we looked into Doge as we were thinking about this, the more we realized that like Doge actually is a much better currency than Bitcoin. And if they ever said that publicly, it would like explode brains.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they do at some point, but they never will. I think it's kind of funny,
Yeah. Speaking of prices, I'm like, obviously Doge, the king of memes. I'd say, a year and a half ago, we had the big rise of memes on Solana, a bunch of trading activity. I'm curious as far as, do you think Doge's growth profile is dependent on like this broader macro framework of, all right, like J Powell is going to cut interest rates, crypto as a whole is likely going to boom. And then, the tail end risk assets of, themes are probably going to go up because crypto is going to be in headlines more and more. Do you think like it's dependent on that broader macro framework? Or do you think it's like, all right, this independent journey that Doge can move beyond that's like independent of this like broader, crypto silo that we live in?
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to talk about price, but what I will say is what I've seen the entire time I've been working in Web3 is that, and since I've been in the crypto economy, is that markets all tend to move together, right? And then there are things that cause, markets to shift and depart from each other. And, I think that everything that we're doing is going to bring a lot of attention to Doge. And I think that as long as people continue to innovate and to build new cool stuff, then yeah, I mean, there should be reason for Doge to perform well as an asset, right?
Yep. Well, I love it. All right. So cool. So speaking of, so some of the work that you're doing within the ecosystem, you mentioned, we talked about your role at the beginning, but would love to kind of get a little bit of a detail into kind of how you got into the space. So you mentioned, your initial motivation to get here was really more of that, that freedom of money, that kind of thing, but maybe talk a little bit about your journey. Cause I think a lot of times folks kind of wonder like, okay, you have this role, like leading a major part of what's going to, affect the Doge ecosystem as a whole. Like, how did you get here? What was your start with crypto, and how'd you get there?
Yeah, so I started my career as a consultant working with Microsoft clients doing like large systems implementation stuff. And so I've always been very, tech focused. During that time, I read about Bitcoin. I think it was 2011, and I, started experimenting with mining it. I'm one of those people who has a bunch of Bitcoin sitting on a hard drive in a landfill somewhere, It's probably a couple $1 million worth. It's not enough to dig up a landfill, but sucks. Since then, after consulting for a few years, I've been starting companies ever since. And I actually started my first company before I ever did that. But so I've started, I don't know, a half dozen companies at this point, and I've exited two of them. They've been across, a wide range of verticals. The two that I sold were a furniture company and a healthcare company. And then around the end of 2020, I was talking with my brother-in-law a lot about starting a company with him, and we were talking about doing a number of different things. And then he got interested. He's a developer, and he got interested in building on Solana. And so we started building Solana apps. And so, we built some really interesting DeFi stuff over there. Then I pivoted over to Aptus when Move seemed like it was going to be the biggest thing in the world, and launched on Movement as well. And so for my entire time I've been in crypto, I've really been focused on building new cool stuff. Right. I feel like the space has a lot of people who just see an opportunity and copy something else. And that's not who I am. That's not who I'm attracted to as like builders in our ecosystem. I think we really need to innovate. And so, yeah, that's what I've been doing my entire time in crypto, is just innovating. I ended up meeting the DogeOS team because they were interested in one of the apps that I had built. And it just ended up being a really good fit. And like we gelled very quickly. And then I quickly joined the team.
Very cool. Love to hear that. And speaking a bit about your brother, who is a developer, I'm curious as far as
brother-in-law. Yeah, not my brother, my brother-in-law.
Well, there you go, brother-in-law.
Yeah.
So curious as far as how you think about incentivizing builders on DogeOS. I know you guys currently don't have a token. Like you had spoken briefly about, developers building on a chain, then jumping onto the next. Like, what are some of these learnings from other ecosystems that you're trying to take with you as you're trying to continue to grow DogeOS?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Like I said, it's interesting being on the other side of this equation. I know what I would like to accomplish. It's not necessarily what we're gonna be able to do at the end of the day, but I think that the best thing that we can do as an ecosystem for builders is to just provide whatever support they need. Obviously, everybody wants money, right? And so, everybody's always asking about grants, but I've had almost zero pushback basically saying that, we haven't given any grants yet. And builders still want to build on us because we're interested in really helping them succeed, right? We're not just checking a box. Oh, I got another DEX. Like what I would like to do is create sort of almost like a shared services company inside of DogeOS where, I meet teams that are really amazing at product and have really great devs, but they have no idea how to market. Right. Or maybe they need some help operationally, or, maybe they need to be connected to the right people. I would like to be providing that sort of support, almost like an incubation studio. We're not really going to be incubating them because these are just projects building on our blockchain, but it's really about, figuring out what each team needs to do to succeed and what sort of help they need, and then figuring out how we can give that to them. So a lot in the past few months has been help around marketing and design and distribution. But, I had a team yesterday and today actually asking me about legal stuff, right? And it's like, it costs a lot of money to get the right information about what you need to do legally. And it's constantly changing. Like, luckily I've spent a lot of money over the past few years doing this. So like, I know approximately some of the good answers, right? And so, that sort of help is really invaluable to projects.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think it just goes to show like the belief in what y'all are doing, not relying on the grant for the reason for it, but because it's a good place to build. There's a lot of opportunity within users and that kind of thing. So I think that's really good. So awesome. Well, yeah, this has been really great, Alex. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. So if folks want to stay connected with you and with DogeOS, kind of stay up to date in terms of as things evolve, as new folks start to announce building with y'all, what's the best way to do all that?
Yeah. So on Twitter, we're at DogeOS. Very easy to find us. I am at A Hoxman. It's like my last name is Hoffman, but with a 0 and 2 X's. And my Telegram's the same minus the man. A Hox. Feel free to hit me up. I'm always happy to chat with anybody. I really love chatting with builders. So follow us on Twitter, reach out to me. Happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk.
Awesome. Very cool, man. Well, really appreciate you spending the time with us. Yeah, and we'll definitely put those in the show notes as well. So if folks want to reach out, they'll have an easy way to get in touch with you. But this has been great, Alex. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I appreciate you having me.